You've sat in a room full of people and felt completely, utterly alone. Not because no one was talking to you, they were. You were nodding, smiling, saying the right things at the right times. You've gotten very good at that, but somewhere inside, there was this quiet voice, watching, analyzing, noticing things no one else seemed to notice, and instead of feeling special, it made you feel strange. You've been called too sensitive, overthinking it, intense, and maybe, just maybe, you've started to believe them. This video isn't going to tell you you're gifted. You already know something is different about you. You just don't know if different means broken or rare. By the end of this, I think you'll know. Trait 1. Your mind never fully rests in. Most people, the brain has a rest mode. They finish a task, put it down, watch TV, sleep. Their mind powers. In people with extremely high IQs, this doesn't happen. Your brain, even when you're doing nothing, is running, connecting, pulling threads from 3 different conversations and weaving them into a single unsettling realization at 3 in the morning. You thought this was anxiety, that maybe you just can't switch off. But here's what they never told you. Your brain isn't broken. It's expensive to run. A high-performance engine doesn't idle quietly. It hums, even in park. That constant, low-level processing is not a malfunction. It is the cost of being built the way you are built. The problem was never that your mind wouldn't stop. The problem was that no one ever gave you a worthy enough track to run on. The most exhausting thing in the world is not hard work. It is pretending your mind is smaller than it is. Trait 2. You grieve conversations that never happened. You walk away from a conversation and feel let down, not because anything went wrong, but because you wanted to go deeper and there was nowhere to go. You wanted to talk about what actually matters, about the feeling underneath the feeling, about whether grief ever fully ends. And instead you talked about the weekend, about your phones, and you smiled. And you drove home, alone. This longing for depth is not pretentiousness, it is hunger. Genuine aching hunger that the surface world simply cannot feed. You're not too much. You've just been in rooms too small for what you carry. Trait 3. You've been performing normal so long. You've forgotten it's a performance. Here's the uncomfortable truth. At some point, probably when you were very young, you noticed that being fully yourself made people uncomfortable. So slowly, carefully, you learned to edit yourself, to ask fewer questions, to laugh at jokes that didn't make sense, to hold back the observation forming in your mind because you already knew it would land wrong. You became fluent in a language that was never your first. Language, researchers call this social masking, and it is exhausting in a way that's impossible to explain to someone who has never had to do it, because you're not just tired from the day. You're tired from the constant labor of translating yourself into a version the room can hold. The tragedy is not that you've masked. The tragedy is that you've masked so well, you've started to mistake the mask for your face. You didn't become quiet because you had nothing to say. You became quiet because you learned that most rooms weren't built for what you were carrying. Trait 4. You feel everything more, but look like you feel less. There's a myth about high-Q people, that they're cold, logical, detached. The reality is almost the opposite. Research shows something called emotional overexcitability in people with unusually high cognitive ability. In plain language, you feel more. The music hits you differently. The injustice hits you differently. You've cried at things you couldn't explain. You've felt grief for strangers. And then, because none of this was ever reflected back to you, you learned to contain it. You built a wall, not out of coldness, out of survival. And now people call you calm, hard to read, and you let them, because explaining the ocean to someone who has only seen a puddle takes more energy than you have left. Trait 5. You see the end before it begins. You can look at a situation, a relationship, a conversation, and within moments, your mind has already run the simulation, seen the outcome, mapped the variables, and more often than you'd like to admit, you're right. So you stay in relationships you knew were going to end because you love the person too much to trust your own prediction. You say yes while internally watching a quiet countdown. And when it finally happens, people expect you to be surprised. But you've already been grieving for months. Privately alone, your pain doesn't look like pain because it came before the event, not after it. And that is one of the loneliest things about living in a mind like yours. Trait 6. You are hardest on the person. You know best, yourself. Most people make a mistake and feel bad. Then they move on. But you don't just feel bad, you replay it, over and over, searching for the sharper response, the kinder word, the moment you hesitated when you should have been brave. You hold yourself to a standard of precision and excellence that you would never, not once, apply to someone you loved. And this is the uncomfortable truth I need you to sit with. The same mind that makes you extraordinary at understanding the world is making you cruel to the person who lives inside it. Intelligence without self-compassion is just a more sophisticated way to suffer. You have used your mind to understand almost everything. The last frontier is learning to understand yourself with the same generosity you extend to everyone else. Trait 7. You've always suspected you don't belong, and you were right. But not for the reason you think. You've moved through life with this low, persistent feeling, like you arrived late to a party where everyone already knows the joke. Like the questions that matter most to you, the depth, the meaning, are somehow embarrassing in a world that rewards confidence and certainty. You've wondered if something is wrong with you. Fish doesn't belong in a tree. Not because the fish is broken, because the tree was never the right environment. The sense of not belonging is not evidence of your inadequacy. It is evidence that you've been placed in the wrong context for most of your life. The goal was never fitting in. The goal was finding or building the rooms where you don't have to shrink. You are not too much. You have never been too much. You are a person whose mind moves at a speed the world wasn't built to accommodate, who feels at a depth that is difficult to translate, who has spent years making yourself smaller so others could feel comfortable. These are not flaws in your design. They are the signature of a particular kind of consciousness, one that has been chronically underestimated, chronically misread, and far too often chronically alone. But here is what I know about people like you. You find each other. Slowly, against all odds, you find the people who speak the language you thought only you knew. And in those moments, you don't just feel understood. You feel, maybe for the first time, like you are allowed to be exactly what you are. That's not a small thing. That might be everything. If something in this video made you feel genuinely seen, tell me in the comments which part hit the hardest. Not because I want engagement, because I want to know where you've been carrying this alone. You're not alone in that. You never were.